Hello, New Zealand. This is episode number 29, Political Playback. It is good to be back, and it's especially good to be back with Simon O'Connor. Simon, good to see you. There you are. You've been holding the fort. I'm pretty impressed, and you're still alive.
I am. I am still alive. Some people have been messaging me today, Bob. They want you to up your game. So now that you're back, you've got to. They feel that with Peter Williams and Alfred Naro covering for you, you've got to step up.
Well, the amazing thing was that Peter Williams was doing it while he was a passenger in a car, and I could see the lights going past, and it was quite a sight to behold as he was commentating as he was travelling down State Highway 1 towards Christchurch. So that was a bit of variety. I actually wondered whether we should have an episode tonight, Simon, because a lot of people would be thinking about travelling for the long weekend and Easter, but I suspect with the current conditions around the country, people might be sitting out this one overnight and just seeing what happens tomorrow. So, yeah, we'll see who's watching.
I think so. And as you know too, Bob, there's a ton to talk about. So, but I think first and foremost, though, people are pleased you're back. Jokes aside, that you're seeing things more clearly now. It's excellent.
Yeah, I'm not so one-eyed. And for those who didn't know, I had a fight between my finger, my eye, and my contact lens, and ended up with a very nasty infection where I had to marinate. The doctors said I had to marinate my eye in antibiotics for 72 hours. So it was quite an experience, but it's nice to have double vision back. Yeah. Anyway, let's get straight into it. If you do want to comment, come to our YouTube channel or come to Facebook page Family First, and we'll see your comments come through. Let's get straight into the topics because there is a lot. And first, biology is back, baby. I just can't believe what is happening in the culture at the moment, Simon. It is a sight to behold. And firstly, before we go overseas, let's just look locally. And the government has finally figured out that actually only women get pregnant.
When it comes to a pregnant belly, it's usually easy to tell who's expecting, but what their pronouns are may not always be as clear. So Health NZ adopted a gender-neutral term, pregnant people, a term now being shelved following a directive from the Minister.
I'm Minister responsible for women's health, and therefore I think it's perfectly acceptable for me to be able to talk about women's health.
Last month, she sent a letter to Health NZ outlining the change.
This isn't about excluding anyone. This is about being clear about our messaging, and the letter is very clear.
I totally support that. What's been happening, and it's happening globally, is that they've been de-sexing the language in the name of inclusivity, but what they've done is excluded the vast majority of women who are affected by women's health issues.
Certain politicians have a history of bad behaviour towards people of the transgender community, non-binary people.
I think it just speaks to the division that this government is just continuing to roll out.
Most New Zealanders would actually say pregnant people are women, and that's quite acceptable to say so.
Health NZ in 2023 released a report on maternity care standards referring to pregnant people throughout, acknowledging not all people who become pregnant identify as women or female, adding health professionals involved in the care of pregnant people should ensure they know the pronouns.
It actually angers the majority of women to be referred to as pregnant people.
What's confusing about the term pregnant people? Well, the fact is it's women. It's women that get pregnant.
I think that she's ignorant because not only women can get pregnant, people who identify as being men can also be pregnant. It just shows that she isn't with the times.
My view is that there is room for all of us in this diverse community to which we all belong.
What's important is just to have clear language, and I think common sense language.
Well, Luxon is back to, I think, knocked me over with a feather. Nothing was more surprising than Luxon actually coming out strongly on that one. Simon, just before you comment, of course, the midwives, they were talking about people capable of getting pregnant. So they were struggling to say women as well. And I was interested just to see a poll on Stuff, which isn't exactly your most conservative website. It's around actually this was slightly early in the piece, but it got up to about 75%. And this is what I find with all these social arguments. I would say 75% of New Zealanders have figured this out. 15%, they want to be nice. They're not quite sure where they stand. And then there's that hardcore 15% remainder. And that's why the Greens and Te Pāti Māori and sometimes Labour will always get at least 15%, because they will not change. They are radical, hard left on these social issues. But anyway, let's go back to this. Are you surprised by the announcement, and how much credit do you give to New Zealand First for this, and how much to the coalition government?
I am surprised insofar as I didn't know it was coming. It was a good headline to see. I mean, really, society, Bob, either is based on empirical reality or on belief. And if we want to go back to a belief structure, which is what of these gender activists want, you end up in a whole series of absurdities. Just remember, there are some people in this community who identify as cats and dogs, and so they'll be forced to tell us that cats and dogs can have human babies too. It's just the absurdities build on one another. So I think it's a good step by Casey. I suspect this is driven more by New Zealand First. National really doesn't like getting into any of these social cultural issues, to be honest. They avoid them like the plague, as you've seen. So this would have been driven by New Zealand First. And the other part of it, this is New Zealand First beginning to get ready for the next election. They are clearly, I would argue, wanting to differentiate themselves, and they see an opportunity to appeal to that 75% of Kiwis who have common sense. As so Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, tweeted about another case I suspect we'll talk about it. He said, we worked out men and women in the Precambrian era. It's really nice that your modern society is just catching up.
Yeah, and I think, look, we've been battling this for a while now. We presented the What is a Woman campaign, and a lot of viewers will have signed that petition, more than 17,000 signatures, saying, hey, we need to get back to the basics of biology in public policy. That, just remind us, Simon, that is still at Select Committee, the petition that we presented. That's 5 months on. We've talked about this previously, but they seem to be holding things up. What's the hold up? Because just remind us, what Select Committee does the petitions go to? There's a special committee for that, eh?
So I think it's actually with a minister now for response, but it initially goes to the petitions committee, and it decides which other select committee it should go to. So education or defence, which would be rather odd, but just to illustrate the point. So there's this initial committee which sort of sets the guardrails and decides what goes on or not. And look, I could be wrong. We've dealt with so many petitions. I thought we were waiting for the minister to come back to us. And so the petitions committee said, look, we're not going to forward this on to another committee. We'll just put it to the minister for a reply. But let's be clear, again, it's the centre-right parties, primarily National, who don't want to engage these topics. They find them a distraction, and there's some merit in that. They don't want to get involved in what they see as the culture wars. But it does tell you something, that they can't even answer the most basic of questions. And that in itself is troubling. They're probably just hoping Bob will go away, but they should know that Family First hasn't been going away for over 20 years now.
Exactly. Now, interestingly, you mentioned the Minister for Women. I didn't realise we had a Minister for Women, so I did a bit of research. Nicola Grigg, is she an old colleague of yours?
Yeah, we were in Parliament together. I got on well with Nicola. We would see things differently. In terms of her ministerial roles, soon after becoming a minister, she had a baby. So that's been a major factor in her life at the moment. But you'd have to say, as a minister, she's basically unknown, unheard of. And I would expect it should take her and her officials 5 seconds to answer the what is a woman. So we'll just keep plugging away.
Okay, now, obviously, a major announcement last night, and that was in the UK Supreme Court, not the US Supreme Court, because we don't want to import their culture wars, do we? So let's import the UK culture wars instead. And in the UK Supreme Court, they have deemed that trans women are not legally women. This was the announcement late last night.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. it is not.
Everyone knows what sex is, and you can't change it. So it's common sense, basic common sense, and the fact that we have been down a rabbit hole where people have tried to deny science and to deny reality, and hopefully this will now see us back to reality.
Yeah, I mean, Simon, it just seems like more of evidence of a cultural tipping point. We had Trump with the executive order saying that there are only, believe it or not, two sexes, man and woman. We've had New Zealand suddenly saying actually only women can get pregnant. And then last night, the UK saying that actually someone who identifies as a woman, if they're biologically a dude, they're not a woman. It does seem like we've got to this tipping point.
I think there are some green shoots. I'm always a bit pessimistic or cautious, maybe not so much pessimism. I'm always cautious, but these are steps in the right direction and rightly should be celebrated. It's common sense returning into our institutions. That Supreme Court judgment, all 5 justices agreed that, again, sex is the basis of being a woman. You know, the XY chromosomes, their biology. And I think one of the really good insights was actually from a law professor who says that trans women or trans men cannot claim discrimination as a woman or as a man. And that's actually really quite an important distinction for 2 reasons, if I might. Again, that they can't claim to be something that they're not. But secondly, and I think it's what that justice was indicating when he said there are various groups, there is still discrimination. You still can't, and I was saying on solid ground this morning, Bob, people shouldn't be going around discriminating and being abusive to people they disagree with. But within the transgender community, they can no longer claim discrimination on the basis of being a woman or a man. And that's quite a profound change.
Yeah, and I think that forcing people to tell a biological lie is not being fair to either side. We need to be able to tell the biological truth, but also we can show respect and not discriminate. And look, I don't think that's happening. Yeah. Now, just related to that, though, is this interesting case in Australia that happened, was it earlier this week or end of last week? But it's basically a case where a mother wanted to put her 12-year-old daughter onto puberty blockers, and the judge basically said, look, the Cass review has said that this isn't in the best interests of the child, and basically refused to, and also had a go at the medical experts or the gender experts in Australia who have been pushing the whole gender affirmation model, the chemicalizing of children with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. So this has been quite a significant case in Australia, mainly because it's just across the ditch, and the Ministry of Health are currently considering our position. So how much of a flow-on effect do you think this case in Australia is going to have in New Zealand?
Well, I'd hope it'd have a significant flow-on effect. I think our Ministry of Health here in New Zealand are dithering. I think they're doing all they can to avoid actually facing up to the consequences of what puberty blockers are and the trajectory that puts into children. I mean, put it really simply, the WPATH or Alpatha people here in New Zealand are desperate to maintain their business model, and I want to stress that it's a business model for them, which affects the medicalisation and mutilation of children. They want to continue it, and so they're desperate to hold ground. But this judgment is damning, Bob. As you know, it's from a federal level court, and the judge pulled no punches. He said there was no evidence of dysphoria in this child, that basically the medical professionals, the path or equivalents, were lying. They were ignoring best evidence. And get this, the judge even went as far to say that the medical professionals and the gender-affirming care advocates misled the court. So quite damning. And it should send a warning, for want of a better word, to New Zealand.
Okay, let's keep moving on, and let's have some of our greens, because just before we do that, this is a perfect opportunity for those who are trying to get their head around this whole gender ideology and how it affects our kids, to just for us to give a little tease about what's coming up at our conference at the end of August.
Hi, I'm Dr. Miriam Grossman. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'd written a book called Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. And I wrote the book after having seen in my private practice hundreds of families dealing with the issue of having a gender confused child or young adult and helping them to navigate that issue. So I discuss this and many other things in my book, and I will be talking about many of those things when I see you again in August.
And actually, I wasn't going to play this, but I really think we should play one of the other speakers that's coming that you've interviewed, Simon, and that's Kirralie Smith. And the reason I want to play this one is because she was in court this week. It's her 9th court appearance, and she has been battling this for 2 years because she's hurt the feelings of some dudes who want to play in girls' soccer teams.
Hi, I'm Kirralie Smith from binary.org.au, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Forum on the Family in 2025. I'll give you an update on all my legal cases. I've been in court 8 times for identifying males in female sports. We've written a book documenting the accounts of 9 families, one from New Zealand, who have been totally and utterly destroyed by gender ideology. And I'll give you an update on upcoming campaigns.
Yeah, so that's going to be a great conference. And of course, it covers all these topics that we've been talking about, Simon. So very exciting. Anyway, let's get into our third topic and let's talk about the Greens. The Greens chaos. We've got a few little strands to this. I want to firstly ask you, I want to show some images and then I want to ask you what the problem is here. Because in my view, we've got some cultural appropriation going on here. So this is a Passover festival. We've got Green MPs there. Remember, they're the ones who chant from the river to the sea, which is, sort of an interesting segue into a Passover feast. But here's Chloe and the Mexican MP, whatever his name is,
Ricardo Mendez March.
Yeah. Now, people have got very upset. And look, just while you're talking, I'm just going to enlarge that so people can see. So what is the offence with this photo here?
Well, there's a multiplicity, and in no particular order. They're at a Passover meal, what's called the Seder meal, and that's probably one of the most, if not the most, sort of sacred or special times within the Jewish and Israeli community. It's where, Bob, they remember the Exodus story, where the Jewish people, freed from Pharaoh's bondage, made their way to the Promised Land, to Israel, over 3,000 years ago. So a very, if you will, sacred, special meal. And the Jewish community here have rightly called what's happening in this photo grotesque. So in terms of the symbolism, they're wearing I've always get it, I can't remember the scarf, begins with a K, but it's well associated with the Palestinian cause and very much associated with the terrorists. And then on their heads, they're wearing those skull caps or kippahs. Now, if you're on the more Orthodox Jewish side, women do not wear them. But the main problem is that they're like watermelons. And people go, what? But a watermelon is one of the many signs of the Palestinian resistance, along with the likes of, the red triangle Hamas puts on your house before they try to kill you. So they are appropriating Jewish symbols, particularly the skull cap. They're then perverting it to be a Palestinian symbol and then grotesquely using it at the most sacred meal within the Jewish tradition. Now, it's not really to be fair, but there's a bit of other context. They were invited by what are called anti-Zionist Jews. So they have been invited by some Jewish people. They are outliers in the community. And the final point is, I don't understand how you can be an anti-Zionist Jew at Passover. Because the heart of Zionism is that the Jews have a right to be in their land. And Passover celebrates the Jews going to their land. And I don't know if you know, Bob, at the end of every Seder meal, I can't say it in Hebrew because my Hebrew's terrible, but it's that next year in Jerusalem, as the people long to return. Chloe and mates are at one that don't want the Jews to return. They want them to be banished from their homeland and these Palestinians take over.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And look, I'm sure the media are all over this and calling them out for cultural appropriation. Could you just tell me which newspaper that's been in?
Not a chance. But as you know, Bob, the Greens would be the first to be screaming from the rooftops. Do you remember, was it last year or early this year, there was a beer company that had Māori motifs and names, and all hell broke loose. Of course, the Greens all over that, but no, when it comes to Jews, when it comes to Jewish people, they don't have any boundaries. It's grotesque, as others have said.
Well, they're tightening up their candidate selection process, which is kind of interesting. I did a little list of sort of reasons.
Your chance.
Yeah, Gola is for shoplifting, Darlene for migrant exploitation, Elizabeth Kitty for allegations of bullying, Marama Davidson for blaming all violence on cis white men, Kahurangi Carter for saying police are scarier than gang members, and Tamitha Paul, has trouble telling the truth. Somebody's in prison for stealing $12 of shops lifting. Anti-prisons, anti-police. We'll come back to that one. And Benjamin Doyle, where, say no more. So tightening their candidate selection process, is this actually an admission that they've got a problem, Houston?
Yeah, it definitely is. To give some context or, further context, National did this after it had an array of MPs caught up in some scandalous behaviours. Not as many, but some pretty bad things. So from time to time, parties do need to review how they're selecting. But it is absolutely an admission that something is very much wrong at the Greens. And so at one level, Bob, kudos to them. They can finally see what the rest of New Zealand can see, which is basically a bunch of misfits running amok.
Okay. Speaking of running amok. We've got Tamitha Paul, who wants to defund the police. She's supporting this group that wants to defund the police, wants to defund prisons, basically doesn't want anybody going to prison for crimes, wants them to serve their sentence out in the public, doesn't want police checks. So it means that a child molester could work with children because you're not doing police checks. I mean, it seems to me, I've heard this commentary a lot, that the Greens have gone way past this kind of focus on environment and have gone to the extreme nutty edge of radical leftist social policies. And is this because of the type of, well, I'm wondering, is it the leadership with two radicals at the top, Chloe Schwarbrick and Marama Davidson, or is it they've just picked up a whole lot of candidates, they've lost a whole lot of candidates, so they've gone further down the list, and they're putting in Parliament people that they didn't think actually would make it. They just wanted to make up the numbers. So are they in a pretty difficult situation at the moment? Because they are coming across really radical.
Well, not for them. They think they're right. They're barking mad, Bob, but they think they're right. They have a core support group, that 10% or so. It doesn't shift. But they think they're right. I mean, have they moved from their environmental base? Absolutely. I was in Parliament when they gutted the more traditional environmentalists like Stephen Browning and David, and I've forgotten his name. They gutted them, kicked them out, deselected them, and then replaced them with these identitarians, so people into the identity politics, cultural Marxism, so it's full of it now. So that's the first point. I mean, probably mixes into that earlier thing on the Jewish thing, but it's not related. But I've often referred to the Greens as watermelons, not because of the Palestinian cause, but they're green on the outside and red in the middle. But they think they're fine and they're right. A big part of it is ultimately that they used to be the fringe left party. They used to be the far left. But now they've got competition into Party Māori, who are even crazier. And I think the Greens are desperate to try and find any way to be relevant, including, defunding the police. And it turns out, I didn't realise this, so people were showing me, is it Tamitha Paul's TikTok? Basically, she just sings and dances all day. I kid you not. It's like, what on earth? But, there's a core base. They like it. They vote for it.
Well, I think, and that's what I alluded to earlier on when I showed this polling, is that you always find that whenever we've polled on gender ideology, whether it's dudes in the girls' toilets, whether it's dudes playing in girls' sports, whether it's forcing teachers to use preferred pronouns, it's always around this 70% have figured it out that it's barking mad, 15% want to be nice, but there is a hardcore 15%. And that's why whenever you see polls, and I know that you were interested in having a discussion around the polling, and you did last week with Peter, is that there is a hardcore 15% that Te Pāti Māori and the Greens are always going to get, simply because they are just radical hard left, and we just got to expect that. It's just that they're the noisiest ones also, and it's also that the media work hard to market them, which we will come to. But just before we do that, did you want to comment on that?
Well, I just think the media indulges the radicals. We've talked about it before. There's many hard-working MPs in Parliament that you'll just never hear of. And I'm thinking of the ones in ACT, in National, New Zealand First, Labour. They work very hard. They're representing their communities, and actually, because most of them actually have an electorate. And also, they're articulate. You wouldn't have to agree with them, but they just don't get any airtime. The media just indulges in that clickbait. And to be fair, that's partly our wider society responsibility too, because we lap it up to a degree. It's just disappointing.
Okay, well, that leads us sort of into the next one, because it seems that the media are doing some marketing in this area. And here's an actual example. I know it's got your blood pressure up. And so firstly, there is this constant media coverage attacking, not defending, not justifying, but attacking National MP Hamish Campbell, because he's involved with a church group where he does home groups. He has some sort of eldership responsibility, but there is somebody in the wider group who is being investigated by the police. Now, I'll get you to comment on that, but I just want to compare that there has been this constant attack line, no defence, constant attack line on the National MP, Hamish Campbell, but there has been constant defence on the Green MP for doing something that he's been posting. So in Hamish's case, it's guilt by association. In Benjamin Doyle's case, well, he's actually said it and he needs to account for it, but the media won't call him to account for it. So anyway, tell us what you think about the Hamish Campbell coverage, because it feeds into the whole why the people distrust the media so much.
Oh, it's just disgusting. And it's not right for a whole number of reasons. I just say it's by association. So at this point, other than he is part of a group, which I'm getting a little bit, I don't know anything about this 2x2, so I've had a couple of people approach me today who say they've been involved with the group and they have serious concerns around their cult-like behaviour. Right. But I want to stress, I don't know enough about them. So all we do know is they are, by and large, maybe on the outer a little bit, but gathering in one's home to read the Bible and pray is not unusual, despite how the New Zealand Herald tried to portray it. They clearly hadn't talked to anyone of faith to sort of understand that, the early Christian church sort of started in little rooms and developed. But so regardless of the group, it's really just association. He is basically being accused and pilloried in the media because he attends Bible readings and a church service, and that some in that group, not in New Zealand, I don't believe, this is overseas, and a long time past, have been involved in abuse, which of course is sickening in itself, but there's no hint that the group here is involved or he's involved at all. So it's just, as I say, it's appalling. It's not even journalism, Bob. It's just terrible reporting, and it's an attempt, as most people can see, to run interference on the Benjamin Doyle issue. It's payback as well from the far left within the likes of the Herald.
Yeah, well, there's certainly been lots of defence for Benjamin Doyle, and of course they won't be covering the fact of something that we published today on a LGBT website. There's actually an article saying that the Burnett Foundation, formerly the AIDS Foundation, that Benjamin Doyle worked for, has been actually removing kink articles. They say following online hate. No, it's not because of that. They're removing them because they are objectionable, hedonistic sexual activity. I won't go into the detail, but it would horrify most people. And so basically the Burnett Foundation are in damage mode, and the media will just say nothing to see here. So, it does lead, we haven't got this down as a topic, but I don't think anybody's surprised by the AUT study showing that only 1 in 3 people have a level of 80-90% trust in the media. Nobody's surprised at that low level of trust, are they?
No. Well, no. And New Zealand has one of the, if not the lowest trust in media in the world, which is saying something. I think the average is 40% of people trust the media, and New Zealand's at 32. The media tried to spin that too, didn't they, Bob? It's another decline. But no, I think people can see through this. And I think, sadly, what Kiwis tend to do then is switch off. But you've nailed it with the difference between the Hamish Campbell and Benjamin Doyle. For Doyle, there are real serious allegations. I always want to underline that word. It's allegations. But he hasn't fronted, and the media also hasn't fronted enough. And I have said it multiple times, the media are not actually pushing in hard enough. And a lot of it's because of who he is. He's in one of these protected groups, effectively. Hamish is not, but he's guilty by association. And again, he's having his name dragged through the mud. But I would add just one thing around the Hamish Campbell stuff. It may be that he hasn't fully described his relationship with his church to the Prime Minister. Put it this way, if he's misled the Prime Minister, if he's tried to downplay his involvement, that could be problematic. But let's also be honest, this is a private matter of faith. I mean, you and I both know it. We're told to keep our faith private. And yet the media, when they get the chance, they barrel on in. They want to talk about it all the time.
But I think the media need to be careful about this guilt by association, because if that's the case, then if there are people in the media who have also been found guilty of some crime, does that mean the whole media is responsible? I mean, the media doesn't say that, do they?
If you were consistent, yes.
Yeah.
No. If they were consistent, and I've written about this, and you and I have talked about it, every group in society, sadly, is implicated in some terrible abuse right across the spectrum. And the media are no different. It's full of crooks and abusers. I mean, just go and pick up the newspaper. Half of them get blimmin' name suppression in this country. But yeah, the media will never talk about themselves. But yeah, you're right, 100% on the money.
Okay, and just full disclosure, Simon O'Connor used to be a politician. Anyway, I just thought I'd get that in there anyway. As we head into Easter...
And I'm Catholic. Talk about guilty by association.
And you're a cis, white, heterosexual Christian male. We're heading into Easter, and interestingly enough, it's a Labour MP, Kieran McNulty, who wants us to be able to booze at Easter, and it's following on from an earlier one by the ACT Party that got voted down. This one has got through to the first reading, but I was interested in what Kieran McNulty said. He just said, look, I've got this bill and it will remove any restriction on the sale of alcohol. So basically, as I've called it, the Easter boozing bill. And unfortunately, we know that Christopher Luxon's very supportive of liberalising Easter trading laws. So there's going to be this constant challenge on Easter trading. So look, the voting record was interesting. All of ACT MPs voted for it. All of the Greens, New Zealand First and Te Pāti Māori voted against it. So this will be the one time, Simon, that we stand with Green and Te Pāti Māori MPs. They actually figured this one out. But the Labour and the National MPs were split across the board. This one got past first reading. Most of them are kicked for touch in the first reading. So why do you think this one got over the line?
Part of it, well, firstly, it's a conscience vote, which is why you get the likes of National and Labour in particular seeing their votes split. I have to say, I'm disappointed at a number of colleagues' votes on this, particularly those who claim a Christian background. This should sort of be a no-brainer. I talked about it this morning. We don't need more booze in society, and actually, it's okay to have some sacred days, including, I might add, Anzac Day. And if you really needed to booze up, you can go down to your local hotel and get a meal and have a drink. So what Kieran's doing, and he's got the right to do it, is expanding it. But yeah, it's a conscience vote. Some MPs might say, look, we're prepared to let it go to first reading and to a select committee so the public can have their say. But my experience has been once MPs nail their colour to the mast, they very rarely change. And as I say, I think it is disappointing. I expect, I haven't talked to the MPs yet, but I suspect they'll be saying, well, it's not really for me to force my views on people, blah, blah, blah. That's a tired argument. It really doesn't hold much water. It doesn't hold much booze either. It's okay to stand up for your beliefs and say that these are actually sacred days for many, or as probably with Te Pāti Māori and the Greens, it's like, this is just one of those days where actually it's okay not to drink and just spend time with your family.
But the fact of the matter is that the law does allow for drink if you have a special license. It's just that if you do drink, you have to have a meal with it. So in other words, you can't just turn up for a boozathon. You've just got to, alcohol has to be part of a meal. So they're actually misrepresenting what the law says. I mean, Kieran McNulty seems to be saying, well, if I want to go down and I don't want to buy food, I just want to buy alcohol. Well, too bad. Buy a meal. You're actually helping the economy and you're helping all the workers that have to give up their public holiday anyway. It just seems to be a weak argument, that, and I'm surprised that a majority of politicians have bought into it. Maybe they're getting, you think there's a bit of a tiredness factor of this? There's just every year there seems to be an Easter vote.
Look, it's something that constantly comes up. I think it's just that cultural change, unfortunately. It's something that we would disagree with. I think it's good to have sacred days. I think it's good to, and again, we're obviously talking Easter, but also Anzac Day. But there seems to be this growing view that nothing is sacred. There's nothing really for the community to do. It's just all down to the individual and give me what I want. And particularly those from a Christian viewpoint should actually be counter to the world and should be trying to push back. But they seem to be getting swept up in it. And it seems to me, as the years go by, that sort of Christian witness is waning. Sorry. So we're becoming more faint as I mix up two words. So, but kudos, there were some, I'm not going to list them off, some held their ground, kudos to them, but a lot of others I'm disappointed.
Yep, there were, what was it? Well, there was about 11 Labour MPs and there was about 14 National MPs, and probably, not a lot of surprises in the National MPs, those ones that we would identify as having faith: Narkley, Pink, Uffendale, Garcia, Brown. So, and some other ones
good on
there.
them.
Yeah,
good on them.
Yeah. And in Labour, Salisa. Seeing if there's any others of interest. The ACT Party decided that they would do a bit of mocking. This was in their newsletter. They said, because they're so keen to drink booze at Easter, that they said, well, if Jesus could drink wine at Easter, then why can't we have a beer dressed as a chocolate? Is this offensive? Do we just need to learn to laugh at this, or is this typical ACT Party? They're happy to mock Christians, but they would never dare do it a Muslim ad?
Oh, it's very much the latter. You tweeted about it or X'd it, whatever one says these days. I don't know what the verb is for using Twitter these days. They wouldn't dare. But Christians are an easy target. I didn't myself find it deeply offensive. I went, oh, it's just sort of tiresome would be the word that I'd use. Yeah. It's just like, oh, here we go again. So a cheap shot. I think you've talked on it before, and I think you're right. I mean, as Christians, we can deal with mockery, we can deal with parody. The person we believe is God and man, died on a cross. He paid the price and he suffered. So, we shouldn't expect anything different. We know that's part of our faith. But I think ACT just missed a trick here, and it really is just basic respect. We're entering in literally in about 15 or so minutes into, the holy, what they call the Triduum, the three most sacred days of the Christian calendar. But ACT thought it was perfectly fine to, as I say, cheap shot at Christians. But go and mock Islam, or go and mock Modi and Hinduism. See how that goes. Exactly. I mean, it's just, it's disappointing.
Okay. Don't want to spend a lot of time on this whole Trump tariffs thing, but I am just interested in the media. I mean, I personally think that the media are being hysterical around the whole tariffs issue. It's a leading issue. It's like the end of the world. it's like climate alarmism, and you know, I think Winston is basically saying, hey, just calm the farm, but he has challenged some of the wording that Luxon used, and said that it's coming across as hysterical and short-sighted. What do you reckon, Simon? Do you think that Peters is just laying some groundwork for the hustle and bustle of next year, because he's going to have to make it quite clear where he stands versus what Luxon says? Or is this just, they're talking a bit past each other, media have made it a mountain out of a molehill?
Oh, the media see the tension between Luxon and Peters. That's the story, not the tariffs. I actually do agree with Peters more than not on this. I don't think we need to be hysterical. Everyone's running about screaming and yelling. I mean, don't get me wrong, the tariffs, I'm not happy about it. I don't think it's a good decision, but I don't think we need to be hysterical. But at the heart of this, Bob, is that Luxon did not consult his Minister for Foreign Affairs when he should have. So Luxon gave a series of speeches in the foreign affairs space, and he should have, even if only as courtesy, but he should have done it, period. He didn't talk to Peters. It'd be the same as making a health announcement and not talking to the Minister of Health. So basically, Luxon insulted Peters. And one thing we know about Winston, he doesn't take that stuff lightly. And so now Luxon's getting, the Winston factor. So Winston says, fine, you ignore me, I'll cause you trouble.
Yeah. Now, I would just like to ask you a question about the tariffs. Like I said, we don't want to get into too much detail on this, but I'm still asking myself, is there some validity with the United States taking on China? I know that you've got an interest in China, you always have. And the fact of the matter is, there are goods coming out of there that are using cheap labour, sometimes slave labour, low standards, low protection for workers. Should the world be calling China more to account? And is that the overall strategy that the US are doing?
So yes, we should be calling the likes of China. They're not the only ones to account for their modern slavery practices and so forth. But there's other ways of doing that. I think the tariffs is a pretty blunt instrument. Right. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I mean, what Trump is trying to do, it's what he calls the art of the deal. And you're seeing already some of the wins for him is that a number of countries are calling up saying, okay, we don't want these tariffs. Let's cut a deal. What can we do? Because from Trump's perspective, and remember, his popularity is up at the moment in the States, because the Americans, by and large, and I sat down and did an interview with my friend Bruce the other day, who's there in Maryland, but long and short, he said it's very popular because at the end of the day, Americans produce stuff which the world doesn't take, but the world expects the Americans to buy all their stuff. So Trump's trying to rebalance things. I still think it's the wrong approach. I think it's far too blunt. But, you know, let's just see where things go. I think, again, Winston's right. There's a hysteria here, which isn't helping us.
I actually, CNN had polling this morning that said that actually Trump is at the same level as he was when he got elected. So the Americans seem to be supportive of what he's doing at the moment. And look, the other thing is, and you may be able to answer this one just from your involvement in Parliament, is that a lot of the times you hear people say, well, there are no tariffs at the moment. But when I researched, we actually do put some tariffs on some textiles, footwear, processed foods, machinery, steel and plastic products. That's according to the MB website. And we've also put tariffs on Russia, and Canada is putting some tariffs on our dairy going against the CPTPP. So for people to say there are no tariffs,
there's a court case, I think.
Yeah.
In general, there are none. New Zealand in particular is free trading. We rely on not having tariffs. There might be a few exceptions. We certainly have trouble with Canada. So, you know, this comprehensive free trade agreement we've got with them, we're already having a fight. Russia's slightly different. It's more sanctions. We just don't take their products, or so that's important. It was also why, in my understanding, when Trump had those big boards up of all the tariffs in countries, he didn't have Russia because it's sanctioned. We're not buying from them. The other really quick thing for people to bear in mind is there's lots of non-tariff barriers. So tariff is, hey, I'm going to add extra cost. But there's lots of non-tariff barriers which countries deploy. And China's very good at this. It's like, oh, sorry, New Zealand, you need to do this 5th line of paperwork now to bring in your dairy. Or, oh, there's a 2-day wait for your fresh goods at the wharf now. So there's these rules they try to bring in to frustrate the process.
Yeah. Okay, very quickly, just one good thing that Trump has done is, and I just reported this, is that they have axed a $25 million pro-LGBT global equity fund. Now, you may say, well, that's nice. What's that got to do with us? Well, the interesting thing is that under Biden, we were actually admitted to the group. And our good friend, ex-Labor MP Louisa Wall, has been going around on behalf of MFAT, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and talking about this funding and how they can improve, promote LGBT in all the countries. And one of the groups receiving it is the Rainbow New Zealand in New Zealand, which gives out funds. So, that Doge is doing a good job in terms of it's just broken a whole lot of funding coming into New Zealand. So, we'll give Trump a hard time.
It's just another good example of why the Americans, it's why they voted Trump in. They were sick of all this money being spent on programs that actually, no matter what people think of the issues, they just see that's not the point of government. Fix the roads, build better defence, do some health care. I see my mate there, old Marco Rubio, he's actually shut down effectively a propaganda office within the Department of State in the last 48 hours. Again, millions of dollars being used to both promote and censor views. And he said, no, we're not having that anymore. So, they're doing some good work here.
Okay, I just have to spring this one on you. Sorry about this, but Andrew Littles wants to stand for Wellington Mayor. So is that goodbye Tory whānau? And, I mean, in Wellington, surely Andrew Little's going to be a shoo-in.
Probably. I mean, Andrew, look, I know Andrew. I actually like him. We got on well together. We travelled together to the Middle East. Yeah.
Despite him championing the abortion bill and also championing the legalizing of marijuana, cannabis.
Oh, challenge him. Getting on well with him doesn't mean I agree with him or any of that. No, we fought tooth and nail, but actually get on well enough can engage respectfully. I mean,
right.
Problem is Andrew's never won. He couldn't hold the leadership. He's never won a seat though. Tory whānau's made such a mess of Wellington that it's quite a chance that Andrew will just slip through simply because he's got a higher name recognition. I was struck though, Bob, is that Golriz Garaman came out today tweeting of how terrible it was that Andrew Little was challenging a young Māori woman in leadership, which again is fascinating. It's not about how incompetent she is, it's who she is. So there's a chance. There's a chance.
Got to have the intersectionality. All right, let's just find out what you've been writing about before we wrap it up. And went to your Substack. You've written about double standards. What are you referring to?
Just once again reflecting, actually you touched on one of the examples earlier, which is the likes of the Greens culturally appropriating Jewish traditions, but being the first to complain, pointing out how the media slamming into Casey Costello, but basically not mentioning what's happened in Australia. So I just go through a number of the double standards and really take hope from our young people who I was talking to a couple of weekends ago, who see through the double standards in society and saying, how do we make a change? And I suppose the thrust of the article is, why don't the rest of us catch up?
Okay, and you've used some of the examples that we've talked about, haven't you? You talked about Doyle, and you also talk about the whole focus on Hamish Thompson. That's correct, eh?
Absolutely. I use basically 3 sets of examples. And again, the young people can see them. Why can't the adults?
Yeah. Okay. I have been writing about Pink Shirt Day, which I call LGBT Indoctrination Shirt Day. And I've done a deep dive into the resources which are being offered to schools as we speak. When schools go back this term, they're going to be inundated with invitations to be part of Pink Shirt Day. It's under the well-intentioned anti-bullying, but it's actually not about anti-bullying because it's not anti-bullying of certain groups. And the other thing is that it's actually pushing indoctrination of sexuality and gender. So check that deep dive, and that's on my Substack as well. Simon, just before we're going to finish off with just a little nice Easter message about hot cross buns. But before we do that, what's the plans for Easter? Anything special?
The stuff that I can talk about, which might sound suspicious, but it'll make sense to people later. Just mainly time with family, then going away. So looking forward to that. It is just such a special time. As I keep saying, it's the most sacred time in the Christian calendar, and I'm just looking forward to spending some time with Rachel and the family.
Okay, and I'll be doing the same. So yeah, nice family time, bit of a break, and looking forward to it. I think possibly it's going to be book reading, watching a few documentaries, catching up on a few things, because I don't know if the weather's going to be that friendly, and I do feel very sorry for example, I know in Tauranga there's the Jazz Festival, which I often pop over to, and that's outside on the main street. They're going to have a bit of trouble keeping their gazebos up, so you always feel sorry for Easter camps that are happening over this period. But anyway, I'm sure people will make the most of it and keep safe. That's the main thing, especially if you're travelling. Simon, we will leave it with this little short Easter message that I did on hot cross buns, but you have a great Easter. And actually, sorry, you won't be here next Thursday. I'm getting in a guest panelist because I've got to make up for all the weeks that I had off. That's what you told me, wasn't it? You said, come on, Bob, pull your weight. You need to do a bit of cover for me. Is that what you said?
I'm just lazy. No, I'm just lazy. I'm also worried that I'm actually wearing a pink shirt as well. People are astute. People are going, oh my God, that's another reason.
My gosh.
I'm off the bench. Or back on the bench.
I'm going to have to include you in this McBlog. Okay, have a great Easter, Simon, and we will see you on the next show. And team, we just leave you with this little message about hot cross buns. Bread reminds us of Jesus' last meal with his disciples and how they broke bread together. The raisins are dried grapes and can be a reminder of the cup of wine Jesus and his disciples also shared at the Last Supper. The cross on the top of the hot cross bun is a reminder of Jesus' death on a cross. And the spices used in the dough recall the spices the woman brought to the tomb with which they planned to anoint Jesus' body. The buns are round and remind us of the stone that was rolled away from the tomb. If you've ever made hot cross buns, you'll know that the yeast makes the dough rise, just as Jesus rose from the dead. Here's another one that I would add. Hot cross buns are yummy. And they remind me of Psalm 34 verse 8 that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. The Easter message in one hot cross bun. Happy Easter, everyone. He is risen indeed.